Has anyone done any Ayurvedic treatments before? Had any nice massages? Been to any clinics?
Massage.
That's it. Anyone else? Has anyone ever had that oil drip thing on the head called Shirodhara? That's quite a nice thing to do. So Ayurveda is basically a system of healing. It's very old. It's as old as yoga as a system, you know. And there's a lot of texts, a lot of information about Ayurveda. The oldest Ayurvedic text that is still used today in universities is called the Charaka Samhita. Around about the time of Jesus, give or take a few hundred years. So some people say 400 BC, some people say 400 AD, you know. So Ayurveda, you have to kind of consider, was the main system of medicine in India at that time. So it's the equivalent of the medical system that we have today. It was considered to be completely integrated and a normal part of everyday life. And the system of thinking in Ayurveda is obviously going to be pre-scientific. So this pre-scientific approach is going to involve a particular worldview that we are no longer using in the West, in mainstream medicine. So this way of thinking is based on observation more than anything. So what is being observed in the environment becomes part and parcel of the way you think about the body. The view of life at that time was very sort of holistic, if you like, in that societies and people and the culture of that time, the things that the rituals and cultures of that time were very much integrated with nature and natural cycles. And even today, you know, if you follow in Hindu culture, Indian culture, all the rituals that they do tend to revolve around natural cycles, the moon cycle, sun cycle, and so on. So even in our culture, there are still things that happen that the celebrations that we have, for example, Christmas, comes very soon after the winter solstice, because it was based on the original pagan celebration of that time. So many of the ideas and practices and thinking behind Ayurvedic medicine is based on this fundamental idea that the body and the person is a kind of an expression of everything else in nature. So what are the elements of this expression? So you have to kind of, if you're going to organize life, if you're going to organize nature, sort of create a sort of category or system of reality, you have to find the language to do that. And the language that is used in Ayurveda is based on putting things into very simple categories in relation to what is seen in nature. So the fundamental building blocks of Ayurveda is based on the 5 elements. And these 5 elements are based on how heavy they are and the qualities that are made up of the elements. So if we think about the heaviest element, which is earth, then we can also think about the qualities of that heavy element. So if you think about earth, for example, you might think, oh, well, earth, how would you describe earth? If you needed to use words to describe it, how would you describe it?
Nutritious.
How do you know that?
Solid and stable. Because
Okay, hang on, because all your words are good. Yeah, but no, I just want to hang on to this.
It's growing plants.
Yes, okay, so you know that there is life in it because life comes out of it. So there is a kind of a dense nutritional quality about it, and that's absolutely correct. And Ayurvedic observers also knew this, right? Through observation. What other words? Solid, stable, heavy.
Fixed. Maybe not fixed.
Now I like these words, solid, stable, heavy, because all of these qualities are listed. They're actually listed as qualities that relate to the earth element, as well as having a lot of nutritional potential. So it's alive, it's full of potential life, and the potential life that can come from earth are the seeds that draw nutrition and moisture from it, and therefore are able to grow. And it's able to hold moisture, isn't it, as well? Earth can hold a lot of moisture. It can hold actually all of the other elements which we're going to be introduced to. What about the qualities of water? If you had to use some words to describe water, what would they be?
Translucent.
Okay.
Sorry,
Fluid.
what did you say?
Slow.
So if we were to use a simple word for translucent,
Clear.
clear. Okay. What else? Fluid.
Movable.
Movable. Moving. Yeah. It's quite hard, isn't it, actually? With
Wet.
Wet. Yeah, no, that's wet is good, yeah.
Yin, it's kind of very yin.
Well, that's kind of,
That's another.
what's it mean, though? I mean, yes, you're correct, but it's kind of making a very specific context, isn't it, when you say that?
What's the word of that? It's flexible? Is it like it can be
Flexible, yes. You can say that it's versatile.
Yeah, nutritional as well. We need it to train.
Yeah, also, and can hold nutrition in the same way the earth can hold nutrition.
Hydration.
Hydrating, yeah. Well, hydrating means the same thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
But-
stable. And stable.
But I would say it can be stable, and it can be moving, and it can be gaseous. So it's incredibly versatile, in fact, that it can have any form, water. It's probably one of the most versatile of the elements. If you think about it, water can be in any form. So it can be solid, but it can also be fluid, and it can also be gaseous, and it can also be hot, and it can also be cold.
It can be heavy too.
And it can be heavy, and it can be light.
It can be everything.
It can be everything. And so water is the most versatile of all the elements. What about fire? Hot. I mean, stating the obvious, it's hot.
Damaging.
Destructive. Yep.
Energy.
Energy. What do you mean?
Well, it provides warmth. It provides
Okay.
power.
So it has a transformational ability. It can change things. So we need heat to cook, for example. So transformational.
Glowing. Light.
Creates light. Absolutely correct. And that's very important, in fact. You might think it's obvious, but it's important from an Ayurvedic perspective. Okay, and what about what's left?
Air.
Air. What are the qualities of air?
Invisible. Nutritious again.
Invisible. In other words, it has no form, does it? If it has no form, it's invisible. What else?
Feel the hair, feel the hole. It's everywhere.
It fills, yeah.
Yes.
it has an ability to fill space.
Nutrition, I guess. Dioxide, oxygen.
Yes, so it can carry things. It's a good carrier. Cooking. So it's supportive because it can support. It can't cook on its own, can it? But it can hold heat, and it can support heat. So it has a supportive quality. Okay, and it also can be potentially destructive, can't it? So air on its own doesn't have its own ability to do much of anything, but with the help of heat, with the help of other elements, it can become very destructive, and it can become very supportive, depending on what you do with it. So again, it has this versatile quality about it. So this is the way. This is where Ayurveda starts, really. It's the 5 elements, and understanding the qualities of those 5 elements, and how those qualities are expressed in us as people. So if you think about an earthy person, you might think, my friend Fred down the road, he's very earthy. He's very down to earth. He's a salt of the earth type of person, and I like him. But David, on the other side of the road, he's also an earthy type, but I don't like him because he's a little bit stuck in the mud, and he's a little bit stubborn, and a little bit stuck as a person. And it's like talking to a brick wall. Can you see? Can you see how we use the language to express a quality that's part of the element? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your own relationship with the element is important. You might think, if you think about your friends, your family, and yourself, and you think about it purely from an elemental point of view, you will come to the realization that you are an expression of elements in the way you think, in your priorities, your desires, your preferences, and so on. You are going to be an expression of the elements in some way or another. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, that's exactly what we are.